It had taken Enron 16 years to go from about 10 billion of assets to 65 billion of assets, and it took them 24 days to go bankrupt.
This company collapsed so quickly and so entirely. I mean, it was into bankruptcy within a matter of weeks.
It just got hungrier and hungrier. Sooner or later, they were doomed to go off that cliff at 90 miles an hour.
It's astounding that they got away with it for so long.
In reality, Enron was a house of cards.
Only a few years ago, Enron was the nation's 7th largest corporation, valued at almost $70 billion. And high above each with a private staircase, Ken Lay and Jeff Skilling had built their own plush staterooms. They were known as the smartest guys in the room, captains of a ship too powerful to ever go down.
In the Titanic, the captain went down with the ship. In Enron, it looks to me like the captain first gave himself and some friends a bonus, then lowered himself and the top folks down in the lifeboat, and then hollered up and said, by the way, everything's going to be just fine.
According to published reports, your husband earned about $300 million in compensation and stocks from Enron over the last 4 years. What happened to all that money?
It's gone. It's gone. There's nothing left.
I netted approximately $100 million. I don't know if that number's accurate, plus or minus 20 million.
And he actually left Enron with more money than anybody, $250 million, because he sold all his stock in Enron after he got a divorce from his wife in order to marry his stripper girlfriend who had had his child.
When Jeff Skilling applied to Harvard Business School, the professor asked him if he was smart. He replied, "I'm fucking smart." Andy Fastow was Enron's chief financial officer. His job was to cover up the fact that Enron was becoming a financial fantasy land.
Enron essentially was losing money on a cash basis year after year, and yet it was reporting profits. So it was defying the laws of financial gravity.
Fastow created hundreds of special companies to perform a magic trick, prop up Enron's stock by making its debt disappear. To outside investors, it looked like cash was coming in the door. In fact, Enron was just stashing its debt in Fastow's companies where investors couldn't see it.
Immediate sense of outrage at Lay and Skilling and Fastow when people realized how much they had profited and how completely artificial the appearance of this company had been.
There were offshore accounts, phony books, and a trail that led from the company's treasurer, Tom Mastroeni, to a mysterious Lebanese speculator no one could find, M. Yass.
What name did you suspect that was?
My ass, you know, and M. Smart. I said, that's Maxwell Smart. I mean, these guys are playing games.
Mark-to-market accounting allowed Enron to book potential future profits on the very day a deal was signed. No matter how little cash actually came in the door, to the outside world, Enron's profits could be whatever Enron said they were. Technology didn't work, and the deal with Blockbuster soon collapsed. But with the magic of mark-to-market, Enron used future projections to book $53 million in earnings on a deal that didn't make a penny.
Are supposed to say no. The accountants are supposed to say no. The bankers are supposed to say no, but no one who was supposed to say no said no. They all took their share of the money from the fraud and put it in their pockets.
The only financial institution that can't produce a balance sheet or a cash flow statement with their earnings.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Asshole.
And then quite audibly, you could hear Skilling say, asshole.
And then he said, asshole.
As I understand, you call him an asshole.
And this just caused unbelievable amounts of consternation all across Wall Street because people thought a Fortune 500 CEO losing it like this, publicly calling an investor an asshole.
If I could go back and redo things, I would not now have used the term that I used.
By the end, the traders ran Enron. You know, the inmates had taken over the asylum.
It was at that point that I knew the architect of the disaster knows that it's crumbling and the rat is leaving the sinking ship.
The Enron collapse was an enormous tragedy. This is a company that had over 30,000 employees. There was at least one, Andy Fastow, that betrayed that trust to the extent that I did not know what he was doing, that he obviously didn't share with me what he was doing. Then indeed I cannot take responsibility for what he did.
At the very moment Ken Lay was talking to employees, only a few blocks away, Enron's accounting firm, Arthur Andersen, had begun destroying its Enron files. On October 23rd, Andersen shredded more than 1 ton of paper. On December 2nd, 2001, less than 4 months after Skilling's resignation, Enron declared bankruptcy.
We had 30 minutes to leave the building, and at that point, it was no longer like being on the Titanic. It was kind of like being on the Lusitania. The torpedo had hit, and there's 20 minutes to get out.
Andy Fastow pled guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud. He agreed to forfeit $23 million in assets. His sentence was reduced to 10 years in exchange for testifying against other Enron executives. In 2004, Jeff Skilling was indicted for insider trading and conspiracy to defraud investors. Pleading innocent, he paid his attorneys a retainer of $23 million to defend him. Enron's accounting firm, Arthur Andersen, was convicted of obstructing justice. With its reputation for honesty destroyed, America's oldest accounting firm fell along with Enron, and 29,000 people lost their jobs.
With today's arrest of Ken Lay, the top echelon at Enron has now been called to account for their crimes.
Mr. Lay, you have anything to say, sir? A little later, Dale.
20,000 employees had lost their jobs. $2 billion in pensions and retirement funds had disappeared. Was Enron the work of a few bad men, or the dark shadow of the American dream?